Hi there, A-Day students. Happy Monday. Just a couple things. I wanted to do a brief introduction of like a simple checklist of what you need to do. And if you want further information, then you can watch the 20+ minute video of me teaching to my 8th period class on Friday. So if you want just the gist of things, just listen for the next couple minutes. But if you want the full-on experience of me going through slide by slide, skip forward to the next couple of minutes, and you will have the entire class, like a revised version of it. So let's go ahead and get started. The things that you need to do today. First of all, you need to do the discussion board. I'm going to use that to take attendance. So at the top of today's folder, there is a discussion board. Respond to it. That's how I'm going to take attendance. 2, after that, go ahead and skip down to slide number 6. You have your persuasive prompt of the day. And so if you look, I moved that assignment to today's folder as well. Open that up. I've given feedback for prompt 1 and 2, so use that feedback to continue on to prompt number 3. And that prompt is, should animals be used for scientific or commercial testing? So again, choose a side, write a thesis, write a specific example, and if you want to, write a counter argument. And then after that, there is a multiple choice. So we're working on the STAR test, obviously. We're moving from revising and editing multiple choice to reading multiple choice. And we're starting with fiction, just because that's the easiest one and it's the shortest one. So if you want to go through the slides, go through the slides. We go through the strategies of doing now and later together in the actual class version of this. But complete those questions, see which ones you missed, which ones you did well on. If you want explanation for a few of the questions, they're in the slideshows. But take your time on it. There's only like a few questions, and that's really it. So again, if you want to spend the time and really process it as we would normally do as a class, just keep on watching this video. It is long, it is extensive, but it's going through the proper steps to be a successful test taker, especially for those of you who have testing anxiety, or those of you who fall asleep during the test, or those of you who just zone out. These strategies are highly recommended, and I'll go over them the next time I see you. But other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to text me. Feel free to email me. Be sure you work on missing work as well. Some of you did not turn in the revising and editing multiple choice. That is your first grade in the grade book. There are like 16-ish questions. So please do that if you haven't done it already. You also have no red ink to complete. Yeah, and that's it. So contact me if you have any questions or concerns. You got this, and have a great day, y'all. So open up the document titled Persuasive Prompt Warm-Ups in Schoology. It's in the most recent folder. I'll show you an example. Just a second. Okay. That's going to be here. I moved it. So it was in this folder, but I decided to move it for you to make it a little bit easier. So open up the document called Persuasive Prompt Warm-Ups. I gave some of you some feedback, so you can look at that. Okay, and so for the third section, you're going to answer this prompt. Should animals be used for scientific or commercial testing? You're going to write a thesis and an example, and if you finish that early, you can write a potential counter argument as well. As a reminder, when you write your thesis statement, your thesis should be 1 sentence. It should answer the prompt and have a position plus reasoning. Okay. For your example, You want it specific, and it should be something along in the help realm. So history, news, personal experience, literature, movies, TV, or people, pop culture. Okay, so make sure it's very, very specific. It's not saying like in general, these general ideas. I understand that this one is a tricky prompt because you may not have specific examples. And you know what? The reader may not know a lot about animal testing. I don't know a lot about animal testing, to be quite honest. So if you need to make up something to make your, example work, I'm not gonna know. Okay. So after doing your thesis statement and example, let's talk about the STAR again. So we have two different sections ultimately. They're kind of like three, but the writing goes, or the essay goes with the writing essentially. So I wanted to talk about the two sections. We have covered our persuasive essay so many times already, and we've covered revising and editing, and that's why we did that multiple choice last class. You should have turned that in by now. And then we have the reading section. So today and next class, we're gonna go over that. Today in particular, we're gonna focus on fiction. Normally, nonfiction is the more difficult one, okay? Students tend to score lower on that. But for fiction, it tends to be easier. So let's talk about fiction. So if you don't know the difference between fiction and nonfiction, I highly recommend copying this down. Fiction means like fake, right? It's not real. It refers to characters and setting, and it has a storyline and a plot, but it's created from imagination. Whereas nonfiction, on the other hand, it has facts, stories. It's usually an article about what has happened to real people and real events. And just to let you know, on the STAR test, these blurbs before the passage will not state the difference, okay? They won't tell you at the top. Below is a fiction excerpt from blah, 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 blah. So you need to know the difference. And the reason why we advocate you knowing the difference between fiction and nonfiction, revising and editing, is because when you read these passages or when you look at these questions, you can look at it in a lens. And so with the fiction lens, you know that they're going to ask questions about characters. They're going to ask questions about theme, about conflict. So you might as well prepare yourself when you're reading those fiction passages. For nonfiction, it's a little bit different, and we'll cover that next class. Okay, so let's talk about fiction text, the types of text. And if you want to write this down, you can. I already gave you this definition. Fiction is like fake. It contains text, contains characters, settings, and plot created from the imagination. Here are the 4 different types that you'll see on the STAR test. Novels have been on it, like excerpts of novels, short stories. A play has been included on it once. It doesn't happen often, and that's why we're not going to teach it, but know that it might pop up. And also poetry. Okay, so you're going to see excerpts from novels, you're going to see short stories, you're going to see poetry, and today in particular, we're going to focus on short stories because it's easier. Okay. So one thing I told you a lot about revising and editing. Revising and editing, you don't have to read, right? Read necessarily. Revising, sometimes you have to read some of the passages. Editing, you don't have to read the passages in its entirety at all. But for the reading sections, for the fiction, for the nonfiction, you have to read the entire passage. They will ask you questions about the entire passage. So get your brain accustomed to that. I know some of you don't like reading those passages, that this test is exhausting, and I get it. If you want to do well and if you want to pass and gain the credit, though, you need to focus on the full text. Okay. So here are some strategies. You're welcome to write them down. They're pretty much the same ones as the revising and editing in some cases. So first, before we start reading the passage, we get the reading section in front of us. We get to our first section of it, right? I'm going to skip the passage first and look at the questions. And I'm going to mark each question now, later, 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 now, later, later. And then I'm going to go back and look at, mark each paragraph with the question number. So let's say number 1 says in paragraph 5, blah, 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 blah. So I'll go back to paragraph 5 and I'll mark it with a 1. And then maybe the next one, I'm like, oh, okay, this one I need to focus on paragraph 2. I'll put a little star next to that one. And this one I need to focus on the beginning and the end. So I'll put a star at the beginning, a star at the end. And just keeping track of what paragraphs you need to pay attention to as you read it, because you know that certain elements of it will be asked about in the questions. Okay, mark up the question, mark up the answer choices of all the now ones, and then we do the later ones. Okay, so we're going to do the now and later strategy in a second. Here are some reading strategies. So this time we actually have to read, and what we highly recommend doing is chunking the text up. Okay, so if you are a person who falls asleep while reading or who loses focus while reading, here I recommend these strategies. Okay, one is chunking the text up, so it's in easier manageable chunks. And so if it's in smaller chunks, it tricks your brain like, oh, I can read this quickly. I can keep my attention. 2 is just simply reading the blurb. The blurb is helpful if it has one, because that gives you summary, that gives you context, that gives you background information so that you can kind of have a gist of what's going to happen. And then read the passage. And so as you're reading the passage, you have it all chunked and you read it separately, and you define any words that you may not know, have your dictionary out. And I recommend annotating. So if you know there's a lot of questions on paragraph number 2, make sure you annotate that paragraph and maybe say, okay, this is what's going on with the character, here's what's going on with the conflict, and summarize it. And that could help you. What I personally like doing when I have to read something and it's boring and it's a lot to take on, I like highlighting, I like underlining, but I actually like getting a sheet of paper, which you're welcome to do. And I like drawing things out. So if it talks about a character or an image or imagery, I'll draw it out on the side. And that's my way of annotating. So you can do something like that too to keep you awake. And then after you summarize each chunk, I personally like to do it page by page, but you can do it 3 paragraphs, 2 paragraphs, whatever you'd like. The last thing I want you to do is identify the author's message. They always, always, always ask about this question, what is the theme or what is the message that the author was trying to convey? So please make sure you figure out, what do you think the author was trying to tell us? What lesson do they want us to learn? Okay, so those are our reading strategies. After reading, you're going to go back to the questions, reread them again, come up with your own answer while covering up the answer choices so that you know you can go with your gut feeling, and then read the answer choices, see if they match. If you need to define any words, define words, eliminate, go back to the text. Always, always do this, especially to double check, and then make sure you answer all of them and move on. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to see the excerpt from Miracle Polish, and we're going to use the steps, and we're going to essentially, read it together, work on it together. But first, what we're going to do is we have to mark each question as now or later. So what I would like everyone to do is go ahead and open up to the assignment that's called Fiction MCQ Practice Short Story. And it should look like this. Go ahead and press Start New Attempt. I need everyone following along because I am going to give you the answers essentially as we do this. You can go ahead and open up the text called Miracle Polish. It looks like this. Zoom out a little bit. And what I would like you to do, there's questions 2 through 8, technically 46 through 52. And I want you to mark all the ones that you think are now questions. And to be honest, in fiction and in the reading section, there aren't a lot of now questions. All the now questions are usually in the revising and editing, but there are a few. And again, we highly recommend separating it now or later so that for those of you who fall asleep or get distracted, you can build that momentum by getting all the now questions out of the way and build up that confidence. Okay? So what I would like you to do is go ahead and flag any of the ones that you think are now. And I'm choosing random ones, so these aren't necessarily correct, okay? I'll give you a hint. 2 of them are now. Can you figure out which 2 are now? And let me know when you're done. Done labeling the now questions. Okay. Okay, so about 70% of us have responded and said that we were done. So I'm going to give you the answers. Okay, so 46 is later, 47 is later, 48 is later, 49 and 50 are now, and the rest are later. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you to take a second, know that we're going to answer 49 and 50 first, and then we're going to do the rest later. And now what I want you to do is I want you to mark each paragraph with the question number. So if you have annotations on, this is a helpful thing you can do so that when you read, we know we can focus. So I'm going to go through each question again. And I'm like, okay, paragraph 1. If I had something to mark it, I'd mark it right here. Okay, so that's one question for paragraph 1. I can even highlight it if I wanted to. Okay, this one is point of view. So that's the whole entire piece. So this one, another paragraph 1. So I would mark it here. There's 2 questions about this. This one doesn't say, it talks about a specific sentence. So that one is our now. This one is also a noun because it's paragraph 5, but I can look into paragraph 5 in a little bit. This one's beginning and end, so this is the whole story. Theme, we know that's like a whole story type thing. So 3 of them are about the whole story, and then 2 of them are within paragraph 1. Okay. So we marked each paragraph with the question number, and the last thing we need to do is answer the now question. So let's go ahead and take a second, and I want you to independently answer 49 and 50. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and I will mute myself. Let me know if you have any questions. I want you to answer question 49, so question 5, and 50. Question 6. It should take you a few minutes. Shouldn't take you that long. And best of luck. Let me know in the poll whenever you're done. So let's take a look at them. And I know some of you can't see my screen, but I'm going to look at number 5. It says, which sentence shows that the narrator has been affected by the encounter with the salesperson? Okay, so when I look at this sentence, there are certain words I need to pay attention to. We see affected, that the narrator has been affected, and then we see that there needs to be an encounter with the salesperson. Okay, so based off of that, I'm going to ask you another follow-up question. Which one can I eliminate? Which answer choice can I eliminate? A, B, C, or D? So when we're looking at number 5 or 49, if I'm looking about the narrator being affected by the encounter with the salesperson, which one can I eliminate immediately? Any others? I see B. I also see D. Okay, a lot of you chose B. It's just talking about then he clicked his case shut and hurried out the door. That's all about the salesperson, right? It's not about the narrator being affected. It's just showing the salesperson's actions, so that's why I can count that one out. For this one, another thing, 2 things struck me, and even though it talks about the narrator being struck, the emphasis is more about his case and how he hasn't sold anything. So that's why we can eliminate this one. So now we're torn between these 2, right? We have, I get it from here. There's a small interaction. When he tried to sell me the second bottle, he understood from my look. Okay. But for this one, it's saying the narrator has been affected. So that's just a small portion of it. When I look at this, is I was having these thoughts only because of the stranger. And then I felt a burst of irritation as I heard him say this. Like, look how much of that is showing his reaction to this person. Whereas this is just it. This is just the interaction that they have. But this one is stronger. And so that's why this one's the correct answer. Okay. And then for this one, real quick, sentence from paragraph 5. It says the author uses a metaphor. Does anyone know what the metaphor is here in this sentence? Yes, exactly. The way the lawn under a cloudy sky changes when the sun comes out, right? So we're picturing like cloudiness to the sun shining. So based off this metaphor, and we can reread paragraph 5, I can summarize it really quick for y'all. We have like the guy takes out the bottle. He puts a little bit of the miracle polish on it. He wipes the mirror down, tries to see, oh, the spot is gone. Oh, this mirror is really dirty. He continues to work and clean the mirror. And then it starts talking about like, oh, I saw myself clearly. There's more than that. There's freshness. There's a glow. I looked at myself with interest, right? It was striking. I used to see this man, but now I'm seeing a man who resembled my old reflection almost exactly, but who had been changed. And then the metaphor. Okay. So based off of that, you have a man looking in a mirror who's like feeling like changed. Okay. So we have these options right here. Let's just call them A, B, C, and D to make it easier. Which one? We know the answer is this right here. But which one can we eliminate first? Why does the author use the metaphor, the way that the lawn under a cloudy sky changes when the sun comes out? Which one can we eliminate? Yeah, the weather outside, right? Because that's literally what is happening. So that is not the correct answer. What else? So I'm going to do it again. So A and B, which one can we eliminate next? Okay, a majority of you are saying A, right? Yes, it's the improvements of the mirror, but this is all about the narrator, right? Because it's talking about a man who resembled my old reflection, like the change in that man versus the change in the sky, right? So it's not about the mirror, it's about the narrator. And from there we have to choose, okay, it's not confusion he's feeling, it's transformation, because it says change twice. Okay, so we did that. Awesome work, y'all. So now what we're going to do, let's look at the later questions. Okay, so this is going to take an extra like 15 minutes, y'all, so brace yourself. So we're going to answer the later questions together. We're going to chunk the text, we're going to read, we're going to define, we're going to annotate, we're going to summarize, and then we're going to figure out what the author's message is. Okay, so let's go ahead and open it up. Go ahead and open the text. I'm going to read it very, very quickly, and then we're going to answer the questions. So as I'm reading, if you would like to answer some of the questions, you certainly can, and then I'll go over answers like when we're done. Okay. So let's go ahead and read this together. This is called Miracle Polish, or it's from the Miracle Polish by Stephen Millhauser. So follow along. A polite no would have done the trick. No thanks, I'm afraid not, not today. Then closing the door in the heavy click of the latch. But I'd seen the lines of dirt in his black shoe creases, the worn down heels, the shine on his jacket sleeves, the glint of desperation in his eyes. All the more reason, I said to myself, to send him on his way. As I stepped aside and watched him move into my living room, he looked quickly around before setting his case down on the small table next to the couch. I'd made up my mind to buy something from him. Anything, a hairbrush, the Brooklyn Bridge, buy it and get him out of there. I had better things to do with my time. But there was no hurrying him as he slowly undid each class with his bony fingers and explained in a mournful voice that this was my lucky day. In the suddenly opened case, I saw 6 rows of identical dark brown glass bottles, each a bit smaller than the bottle of cough medicine. 2 things struck me. The case must be very heavy, and he must not have sold anything in a long time. The product was called Miracle Polish. It cleaned mirrors with one easy flick of the wrist. He seemed surprised, even suspicious when I said I'd take one, as if he wandered the earth for years with the same case bustling, filled to bursting with unsold bottles. I try not to imagine what would drive a man to go from house to house in a neighborhood like this one, with porches and old maples and kids playing basketball in driveways, a neighborhood where a Girl Scout sold you cookies and the woman across the street asked you to contribute to the leukemia drive, but no strangers with broken down shoes and desperate eyes came trampling from door to door, lugging heavy cases full of dark brown bottles called Miracle Polish. The name exasperated me. A child could have done better than that. Though there is something to be said for the way it sat there flaunting in its fraudulence. Don't trust me, it shouted for all to hear. Don't be a fool. When he tried to sell me the second bottle, he understood from my look, that it was time to go. You made a wise choice, he said solemnly, glancing at me and looking abruptly away. Then he clicked his case shut and hurried out the door as if afraid I'd changed my mind. Lifting a slat of the half-closed blinds, I watched him make his way along the front walk with the sample case pulling him to one side. At the sidewalk, he stopped, put down his case next to the sugar maple, wiped his jacket sleeve across his forehead, and gazed up the block as if he were the new boy in school, getting ready to cross the schoolyard where faces were already turning to stare at him. For a moment, he looked back at my house. When he saw me watching him, he grinned suddenly, then frowned and jerked his head away. With a sharp snap, I let the blind slat drop. I had no interest in mirror polish. I placed the bottle in a drawer of a hutch where I kept extra flashlight batteries, packages of light bulbs, and an unused photograph album, and I gave no more thought to it. So I read the first page. So if I were to summarize what has happened so far, sometimes I would do characters involved. So who are our characters? Who's introduced so far? This is an easy answer because there's only 2. Okay. If I could see some typing in the chat or unmuting, that would make things simpler and I can let y'all go earlier. Who are our characters? What has happened in this first page so far? Thank you, Madison. We have the salesperson and we have the narrator. So those are our 2 characters and we can describe them in our notes to the side. The salesperson, kind of sad, okay? Based off of like he's having to sell these things. Whereas the narrator, kind of sassy, kind of like, I just want to get it once, buy, and get him out. Okay, and it's all about this miracle polish that's supposed to clean everything. And the narrator is pretty much like, I don't care. He put it in a drawer, that's that. Okay, so you can write that on the side of your notes. We're going to move on to the second page, and then we're going to answer some questions. So I need you to participate. So thank you, Madison. I appreciate you. So we're on paragraph 4. Early one morning, a week or so later, I stepped over to the oval mirror in the upstairs hall, as I did every morning before leaving for work. I tugged down the sides of my suit jacket and smoothed my tie. I noticed a small smudge on the glass near my left shoulder. It probably had been there for years, ever since I brought down the mirror from my parents' attic, along with a faded armchair and my grandmother's couch with the threadbare arms. I try to recall if I've ever cleaned the oval mirror before, whether I had ever bothered to dust the old mahogany frame carved with leaves and flowers. I understood that I was having these thoughts only because of the stranger with the bony fingers and worn down heels. And as I went down the hutch, I felt a burst of irritation as I heard him say, "This is your lucky day." Upstairs, I pulled a tissue from the box in the bathroom and unscrewed the top of the brown bottle. On the dark glass in white capital letters stood the words, "Miracle Polish." The liquid was thick, slow, and greenish white. I applied a bit to the tissue and wiped the smudge. When I lifted my hand, I was almost disappointed to see that the spot was gone. I was aware of another thing. The rest of the mirror looked dull or tarnished. Had I really never noticed it before? With another dab of polish, I set to work wiping the entire surface, right up to the curves of the frame. It was done quickly. I stepped back for a look. In the light from the overhead bulb, with its old glass shade mixed with the sunlight from the window on the nearby landing, I saw myself reflected clearly. But it was more than that. There was a freshness to my image, a kind of mild glow that I'd never seen before. I looked at myself with interest. This in itself was striking, for I wasn't the kind of man who looked at himself in mirrors. I was the kind of man who spent as little time as possible in front of mirrors, the kind of man who had a brisk and practical relation to his reflection, with its tired eyes, its disappointed shoulders, and its look of defeat. Now, I was standing before a man who resembled my old reflection almost exactly, but who had been changed in some manner, the way a lawn under a cloudy sky changes when the sun comes out. What I saw was a man who had something to look forward to, a man who expected things of life. Okay, so we read the passage. Feel free to write your summary of how it ended. Okay. And so let's do some later questions together. Okay, so let's do 46 together. Go to the first question again. It says, read this quotation from paragraph 1. It talks about the lines of dirt in his black shoe creases, the worn down heels, the shine on his sleeves, the glint of desperation in his eyes. So based off of this description of the salesperson, how does the narrator feel? So let's come up with an answer with each other. So let's first do this. Based off this description, does the narrator feel positive, neutral, or negative? Okay, what do we think? Does the narrator feel positive, negative, or neutral towards, based off this description? Okay, we have a mix of neutral, more negative. Okay, it seems like more people are saying negative. Let's look at the text again. What words stand out here? Like if you were to choose a phrase, what is the most important phrase in this sentence? So go ahead and unmute yourself or add into the chat. Okay, Tamara said desperation. What else do we got? Alex, what do you think? And Emily. And it can be the same words. It's totally fine. Okay, awesome. Oh, I like that one too, Emily. Okay, so we have worn down, desperation. These are negative words, right? So based off of that, let's look at our answer choices. We have appreciation, pity, frustration, or suspicion. Okay, so before we choose the correct answer, y'all, I want you, which one can we eliminate? That's my question. Okay, which one of these can we eliminate immediately? Excellent. Okay, we can eliminate the positive word, right? We can eliminate appreciation. Great. So now we're stuck with pity, frustration, and suspicion. So what do y'all think is the correct answer between G, H, and J? Does he feel pity for him? When we see the words worn down and desperation, is it more pity, like he feels bad for him? Frustration, he feels like kind of annoyed and upset? Or suspicious, like I think he's up to something. Okay, excellent. So a lot of us are torn between G and H. So we can take away J now. He's not suspicious, like nothing. He still bought the the bottle. So not that bad. So it's either pity or frustration. And a majority of you got it right. It is G, pity. So it's not frustration because we don't see any anger here. We don't see any like he's upset at him. It's like it talks about these details and makes like I kind of feel bad for him. And that's why he purchased from him, right? So correct answer is G. Go ahead and put that in. Next one, 47. The point of view used by the author gives the reader insight to the. So let's look at the text again. What kind of point of view is this written in? So we know our point of views. We have first, second, and third. And then we also sometimes have third omniscient. Okay. What point of view is this written in? If it says, like, I'm afraid not, I stepped aside, I'd made up my mind. Okay, we know the point of view then. It's first person, meaning it's good, nice, good job, you guys. It's first person, meaning it's the narrator's point of view. So with that being said, which one can we eliminate then from our answer choices if the point of view is from the narrator and we get insight about who? So which ones can we eliminate? Excellent. Okay, I'm asking the questions, which ones can we eliminate? The salesperson's feelings, we don't get insight to that, right? We also don't get the insight to the salesperson. I mean, we can see it, right? We can see the salesperson's behavior still, but like, it's not that insight from the point of view. So we're left with A or D now. A or D. So which one's the correct answer? What is the correct answer here, A or D? Excellent. A majority of you got it right here. It is A, it's the narrator's thoughts, because nowhere here does it talk about him being scared. Okay. So that's why it's A. Good job. Okay. So what I want you to do is answer questions 48, 51, and 52. I'm going to give you like 5 minutes to do that. I'm going to share with you the answers after that. And then I'm going to go over any questions that we need to go over. And that's it. You don't even have homework. So after we're done with this, you're done. Okay. So 48. This one says conflict. So we're looking at conflict. And right from the beginning of the story, a polite no would have done the trick. No, thanks. I'm afraid not today. Like as soon as he came in, like he did not want him there. Right? So we know for that one, we can choose like the author establishes the conflict, not with the weight of the salesperson case. Like that doesn't really make sense there. I can't eliminate it because I answered it. Observation of the neighborhood, that was like later in the paragraph. But that's like not the main conflict, right? The main conflict was about the salesperson and how the narrator was feeling about it right from the very beginning. So that's why this one was the answer choice. You could choose this one, but like it was way before then. Okay. And then for some of you said 51. 51, you need to make sure you like track it at the beginning and at the end. At the beginning, we had like a very negative tone. And at the end, we had a more positive because he's like, I'm changed. Right? So we can eliminate this one right here because he wasn't concerned at the end. He was happy. So we're looking for a positive one. And all these are positive. All these are negative. So it has to be one of these three. But was he super energetic at the end? Was he like bursting with like energy? I can make that one. I can get rid of that one. Was he sympathetic? Was he feeling towards someone? Or was he ever defiant? Like, no, I don't want to. You know, so like he still purchased the bottles. So that's why this was the correct answer. And the last one, we kind of answered this, the mirror with the last question right here, right? The transformation of the narrator. Often these questions kind of coincide and they go together. So if we're looking at the transformation of the narrator and we got that right, we're looking for some kind of change or transformation, and we're looking at theme, right? So when we think of cleaning something, what does it represent? And we can get rid of like this one. There's no honest work in there. Inaccuracies found in images, that doesn't really relate. So you're down with these two. But ultimately, when we think of change, we think of renewal, right? And he had this opportunity to change because he looked at himself in a clean mirror. And that's the correct answer there. Okay. So here are the correct answers. I'm going to put it in the chat. And that is it. Guys, I've never stayed this long with y'all, and I apologize, but at the same time, you have no homework. Your homework is to enjoy this weekend and to finish the revising and editing practices. If you have not finished that, was due last class. So please do that. Get it done before the weekend is over. And do we have any questions? Thank you for your patience, y'all.